Hi, this is Brett Ingram, award-winning entrepreneur, and today I want to ask you a question. How safe and dependable is your digital marketing income really? So digital marketing has a lot of benefits, and that's why a lot of us got involved in it in the first place. By comparison with a traditional brick and mortar business, obviously the ability to generate large amounts of money, be able to do it with a very small footprint, sometimes from the comfort of our own home or our basement or apartment or a closet or whatever it is, we have the ability to be able to do a lot of that stuff from our own home without needing an office, a staff, overhead, inventory, machinery, equipment, utility bills, and everything else. And so it obviously has a lot of benefits. The other thing that's really cool and interesting about digital marketing is there are a lot of different ways to do it. So there are a lot of different elements and aspects to digital marketing. We could do something that is in our own wheelhouse that we feel passionate about and still be able to be successful with that, which is awesome. At the same time, one of the things that's really that sort of makes it exciting, but also adds an unknown element of risk and uncertainty, is the fact that it is a very dynamic and fast-moving industry. I think back to when I got started in, I think it was 2007. So in 2007, just to put it in perspective, the social media networks did not exist. So you couldn't just, not in their form that they are today anyways, you couldn't go on to Facebook and buy a bunch of ads and get your product out in front of people. You couldn't do the kinds of things that you could do now. Search engines existed, but you didn't have, there was no TikTok, right? There was no Instagram. These things didn't exist. And if we go a little bit deeper than that, a lot of the tools didn't exist that exist now either. So every type of digital marketing thing we need to do, we want to generate leads for our website, we want to optimize our SEO, whatever. There's a software app or a software as a service that we can buy online that will do that and automate it for us. None of that stuff existed. There was a very small number of tools. The other thing is, it's important to understand there was no high-speed internet except for companies, which means there were no high-quality videos online. In fact, videos themselves were pretty rare. If there were any videos on any pages, they were these little tiny squares in low resolution, because if you tried to put a big video on there, the streaming would absolutely kill it. You would load a web page and it would spool pieces at a time. Nowadays, you rarely see that kind of stuff unless you happen to be in a really slow connection. But the point that I'm making with all that is the fact that it's dynamic and fast moving. All of those things have changed in just 15 years, which, while 15 years may seem like a long time, for the quantum leaps that digital marketing has made in that period of time, it's absolutely astounding. Most industries don't change that rapidly in terms of the way that they look in 15 years. And so there was a blessing and a curse with all of it. If you look back then, there'd be some that would say, geez, oh, it must have been great. I wish I got started back then. There was no competition, right? There were no products out there. You couldn't just do a Google search and find a product for any kind of thing you already want to make and find out that it's already out there. Absolutely true. At the same time, you didn't have the ability to create stuff as easily. Programming was more expensive. Outsourcing didn't exist in the way that it does right now. There were no code bases to be able to build on because the internet wasn't as fast. A lot of the other things didn't exist. The ability to promote and to get traffic to websites was totally different because you couldn't just buy ads. You couldn't just make YouTube videos. So all of these things have changed, and they've made things better and they've made it worse. Competition has increased, but so has opportunity, so have the tools, and so have the way of being able to do it. So what it all comes down to is, still, if we have a good message or a product or whatever, there are avenues to be able to be successful. But the moral of that story and the point of all of that is the fact that there's constant change in the industry. And so no matter what we're doing in digital marketing, what's important to understand, and if you have a backward-looking view like I do, because you've been around it a long time, what you know to be true is that the industry experiences a lot of ups and downs, and we will personally as well. and it can be very hard to predict. So it's very challenging because whatever we're doing right now may be working, and tomorrow it may not be working quite as well. And so there are a lot of ups and downs. It's hard to predict. Part of the reason it's hard to predict is because innovation. You're seeing new things come out all the time. If we just reverse in a year ago, there was no AI. A year ago, AI tools were in their infancy. Barely anybody was talking about it. Now, you can't go 15 minutes scrolling anything online or listening to the news or talking to somebody without the conversation coming around to AI, because it's everywhere. And it's absolutely transformed the way things work already. And we're still getting started with all of that. But in addition to innovation, it's the speed that things change at. So there was always innovation going on, right? If you look back to the 1950s, there was innovation going on, but it was moving at a much slower speed. And so things were a little bit more predictable. If you knew that the printing press was being invented, and obviously that's not in the 1950s, but if you knew the printing press was being invented and you were hand transcribing volumes of work and had a staff doing that, you would know, the future's coming and this model isn't going to work anymore. Nowadays, you could have a staff of people that are doing administrative work and transcribing videos or whatever, and you're out of business because AI comes out, you click a couple buttons and it transcribes your video for you. So it's an extreme example, but the point is the most important element of that. And it is simply the fact that there's a blessing and a curse with the digital marketing industry, in that there's a lot of ease in getting into it. There's a lot of upside, but there's also risk, and there's also constant change and dynamism, which makes it a challenge. So what works today may not work tomorrow. And so we come back to the same question, and that is just how safe and dependable is your online income? If you're making money online and you're doing it in any fashion, I don't care if it's e-commerce or email marketing or SEO or whatever it is that you're doing. In my experience, the safety and security and dependability of our income stream all comes down to one thing. And we're going to get to that in 1 minute. But first, let me share a couple of background stories just to fill in the gaps here. So the first story is about product launches. So the idea of a product launch is that you create a piece of software or maybe a how-to guide or a course or whatever, and then you get everybody excited and ready to go, and you get affiliates ready to go, and maybe ads if you're going to do it, and you launch. You go live on a certain day. So the modern day parallel to this in the grand economy is like the Apple iPhone launch or whatever. They learned how to do these launches where you do a couple of beauty shots and a little mysterious reveals, and then it's dropping on X date, and then everybody's all excited about it. Same idea. And that was a great business model. For years, it worked really well, and I actually was doing launches myself, and I got to a point where I had built them up, and I had gotten to a point where I thought I was going to have, tip that tipping point, and all of my new ones were going to be absolute smash hits. I had had all the best affiliates on board. I had finally made a name for myself, and I was so excited. We did a launch. We did 100,000 the first day, 500,000 on the launch, and I was so excited about it. And then a couple of months later, the industry imploded. The reasons don't really matter for the purpose of this context, but the fact of the matter is, launches literally ground to a halt 3 or 4 months later. And all the people that were marketing as the big affiliates for everybody else decided to only promote their internal products. And so this model that I had worked hard over a couple of years to build up and to get into the good graces of all these other top affiliates that I had worked really hard to do and did it legitimately and had actually succeeded in it, all of a sudden was pulled out from under me. It didn't really work anymore. You could technically still launch, but you just couldn't make the kind of money that you could. And it's almost as though you had a service-based business and then COVID hit, right? It's the same kind of deal. Literally overnight, basically your stuff goes under. The second story is software. So I make software products, and I really like to make software products. And some of the software products for a while when we were making them, they were selling really well, and it didn't really matter even what it was. Any kind of software was able to make a lot of money because there were so few apps that were out there that people were thirsty for anything that was going to help them get going in digital marketing. As you might guess where the story's going, software essentially went the same way. Now, software is still around, and by the way, so are product launches. But the fact of the matter is, even the software industry cooled off and got to a point where it was no longer what it was. In fact, I've seen a lot of articles recently about, is this the death of SaaS? And it's so hard now to get software as a service to work and all this other stuff. Again, it doesn't mean you can't make money with it. It just means it's not the gold rush that it used to be. The third thing is email marketing. Now, email marketing, interestingly, while people think it's old school and everything else, I actually just looked at some industry statistics for it, and it's at about 13 billion worldwide. It's actually forecasted to grow to about 18 billion in the next 4 years. So it's a massive industry, and it's actually growing, ironically, despite the fact that it's considered kind of old school. Flat out does work. That said, there are lots of changes in email marketing. Google and Yahoo just rolled out new changes. So if we were doing email marketing, we've had the possibility that whatever we were doing also could get shut down or minimized or not work as well. In fact, that also happened to me, where I was using a lot of email marketing. I was doing really well. I was doing it for years. Everyone on my list was a buyer. It was all legitimate stuff that I was sending. Didn't matter. I ultimately found my sales grind to a halt, my clicks grind to a halt, and everything else. So those are three different stories about three different digital marketing sort of models or way to make money online. Question is, what do they all have in common? What they have in common is that each is an individual income stream. So what that means is alone, they're all vulnerable. Any one of those alone is vulnerable. If you're doing product launches and then product launches disappear or get reduced in effectiveness by 80%, so does your income. If you're making software and you're spending all this money to create software and the ROI drops by 80%, there you are. If you're doing email marketing and you're making X amount of dollars per month, and then all of a sudden it gets shut off like a faucet and that X gets cut by 90%, you're stuck. I've seen the same thing, while it hasn't happened to me personally, I've seen the same thing happen to friends that I have and colleagues I know in SEO. Some people were doing SEO, and some of them, were using gray hat techniques, so to speak. So they were things that maybe weren't the smartest long-term strategies, but they were things that were working. And back in the day, it was like keyword stuffing and then backlinking and all these other things. And people were doing that kind of stuff. And I talked to people and I've seen stories of literally somebody making money hand over fist and having traffic flooding into their sites and literally waking up in the morning, turning it on, seeing their sales at zero, not being able to figure it out, doing a search for their site, and it's gone. It's literally delisted from the search engine overnight, like the snap of a fingers. So if you're relying on SEO as your income and that's what you're doing, even if you're doing everything right, potentially you're at risk. For Google Ads, I know the same things happen to people with Google Ads. They were running Google Ads at a profit. They were able to make money doing it. It worked over and over again, and then Google Ads either shut down their account or changed the algorithm they were using. So now the cost of those ads doubled or tripled, in addition to the fact that you have new competition coming in all the time. And so what happened there was they ultimately couldn't make a profit anymore. Social media. I know people that have had YouTube channels. I know people that have had Facebook accounts. I know people that have had my own Facebook advertising account got shut down. I didn't even run any ads. I had a guy that I hired do a couple of test ads or something that had experience doing it. They shut me down. I appealed it and said I had somebody else working for me that no longer is. They told me no, the ban is permanent. So if I was relying on that as an income stream, I'd be out of luck. TikTok. If you're on TikTok right now, you are shaking in your boots because the fact of the matter is, if you live in the United States, you may not be able to use it anymore in a couple of months. So again, if you notice the pattern, all of these various things are all ways that can be very effective in making money online. They're all good digital marketing methods. However, they're all vulnerable. because the fact of the matter is they all rely on one solo silo income stream. But together, if you combine them with others and you have multiple income streams going, they're diversified. And that's what it all comes down to. Your digital marketing income, all of our digital marketing income, is as safe and dependable as it is diversified. And when I say diversified, I don't mean I have one product that does Facebook submitting, I have one product that does TikTok submitting, I have one product. That's better than having one piece of software. But the fact is, it's all doing the same thing. So if there's some innovation shift there, if there's some change to the terms of service for the way those companies work, that whole thing is going to get shut down. So we want to have it diversified away from our primary source. So they're two separate independent things that if one gets dinged, the other one's okay. So we have multiple software apps, right? And say they're in different things. We have an image creator and a video creator. That's better than having just one, but it's all still software. So if the SaaS industry in and of itself becomes hard as a model to make money, and it has become harder, then we could be stuck, because the fact of the matter is, it's still all going to decline. If we have multiple email marketing lists, which by the way, I did, and even still, multiple email lists is better than one. I had one literally shut down. So if that was my only one, I literally would have gone to zero the next day. I had other lists, but they all became less effective because of rules and blacklists and things like that that were not based on anything that I did wrong. But the internet service providers, the services I was using, were putting me on shared IP addresses, and other people were spamming, and that got my own stuff shut down. So the important part about that underlies all this is it doesn't apply to me because I'm doing things the right way. Doesn't matter. I've done things the right way too, and the fact of the matter is you can still get shut down. So multiple email marketing lists are better than one, but it's still all email marketing. When we have income streams that come from different sources, we're able to weather the storm if and when something happens. So if we think about this in terms of something that's non-digital marketing, let's think about the stock market. The parallel is perfect. If you go out and you invest all of your money in Apple, right? And Apple's generating returns on your investment for you and you're getting excited, that's great. If Apple all of a sudden tanks, they have an antitrust lawsuit and the stock drops, all of your money drops, all of your value drops overnight. And that applies to any stock. It doesn't matter whether it's Apple or anything else. Whereas if you get a mutual fund, now you're diversified, right? So instead of buying one tech stock, now you've got a stock over here, a stock over there, you got this, you got that. And so some are going to go up, some are going to go down. So yes, it does limit a little bit. It hedges your upside in terms of the stock market. However, it limits your downside and it levels you out in terms of your dependability. So it's the same idea. What we need to do is we need to look for ways to diversify our digital income into 2 or ideally 3 areas. Now, we don't need to do this all at once. The first step is we build up our first income stream. But once we've got that going, it's very important that we add a second and ultimately add a third. So that way, if one gets dinged, the other ones are all still going to be moving enough, and we're going to be plugged in enough places where we can adapt if we need to. So the takeaway here is that digital marketing or an online business are fantastic ways to make money and generate income. They have very high ceilings and very low overhead, but they're also deceptively volatile. And it's something that can easily take us by surprise. So if we get too comfortable and go all in on one model, we put our income at risk. If the money's all extra and that's our side hustle, then no worries, right? You can make what you can make, and if it starts to tank, whatever. But if it's income that we depend upon, if it's our livelihood, if we support our family with it, any of those other kinds of things, if we pay our bills, then it's vital that when we have one income stream or model that's working, because that's the first step, that we look to add a second or a third. That way we can enjoy all the benefits that digital marketing has to offer without worrying, and know that we built a business or an income stream that will absolutely endure.